Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but it still doesn't work? You show up, you provide, you protect. You text her first, plan the date, cover the check. You even listen when she talks about her day. But somehow, she drifts. She says you're too nice. Or worse, she says nothing at all and just fades. It's one of the most frustrating experiences a man can have. And the worst part? You don't even know what you did wrong. But here's the truth no one tells you: what hooks a woman emotionally is not what you've been taught to give. We've been raised to believe that being a good man means being a consistent provider and protector. And sure, those things matter eventually, but in the early stages when true attraction is being formed, they're not what makes her pulse race. What does? Something much deeper, something quieter, something most men overlook entirely. And it starts with a question: what if real attraction isn't built through action, but through presence? Let that sink in. Not through chasing, not through proving, not through fixing her problems or over-explaining your worth, but through stillness, through self-possession, through the kind of emotional energy that says, I don't need to impress you. I am enough as I am. This video is not about playing games. It's not about manipulation. And it's definitely not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about learning how to return to your center and understanding the hidden emotional triggers that women respond to beneath the surface. These aren't the loud signals, not the expensive gifts or grand, romantic gestures. They're subtle, quiet, almost invisible. But once you understand them, you'll see them everywhere, and you'll stop overgiving. You'll stop chasing. You'll stop leaking your power in ways you never even realized. Instead, you'll step into a different kind of energy, the kind that pulls without trying, that leads without speaking, that earns respect and desire without begging for either. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the most powerful man is the one who needs nothing and can observe everything, the man who can sit with silence, the man who responds rather than reacts, the man who can walk away when something no longer aligns. That man is not cold. He's not passive. He's anchored. And women can feel that, not in what he says, but in what he doesn't say. Not in how fast he moves, but in how slowly he chooses. Not in how much he gives away, but in how little he needs approval. This video will walk you through 10 psychological triggers that most men completely overlook, triggers that are backed by both modern psychology and ancient Stoic wisdom. And before you think, oh, I've heard all this before, let me ask you, do you know how your tone of voice can trigger her sense of emotional safety or uncertainty? Have you ever noticed how stillness can be more attractive than movement? Do you understand why your ability to stay grounded when she tests you is the ultimate green flag in her subconscious? These aren't pickup lines, they're internal shifts. Small calibrations that change everything. And the best part? You don't have to become someone else. You just have to return to who you were before the world told you to prove yourself. Because when a woman meets a man who doesn't chase, but who chooses, who doesn't perform, but who presents himself, she feels it. And she remembers it. This isn't about making her fall for you. It's about becoming the kind of man she doesn't forget. So if you've ever wondered, why do some guys walk into a room and get noticed without saying a word? Why do some men seem to attract devotion without ever trying? And why do others, despite doing everything right, get ghosted? Then you're exactly where you need to be, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand attraction on a surface level. You'll feel it from the inside out, and you'll realize you don't need to chase women to be attractive. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. Before we dive into the first trigger, take a second. Think of a moment when you felt yourself chasing, over-explaining, overcompensating. What would have changed if you had just paused and chosen silence instead? Now imagine bringing that version of yourself into the next room. You walk into, still, grounded, awake. That's where we're going. This journey isn't for boys who seek approval. It's for men who seek mastery. Let's begin. And before we get into it, take a second to tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from? If this message resonates with you so far, like the video, share it with a brother who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. We're building a tribe of men who no longer beg for love, but embody it. This is the start of something deeper. There's something she won't say out loud. She might laugh. She might flirt. She might even say she's not looking for anything serious. But underneath it all, there's one emotion she doesn't want you to see. Uncertainty. And I'm not talking about confusion over whether she likes you or not. I'm talking about something far more primal. The uncertainty of you. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? Are you into her? Are you just observing? And that uncertainty drives her wild. Most men are too easy to read. Too fast to compliment. Too eager to respond. Too available with their emotions. They show their hand within minutes and kill the mystery before it has a chance to breathe. But the man who sits in stillness, the one who doesn't rush to fill the silence, who can look her in the eye without needing to explain himself, he triggers something ancient in her, something she doesn't fully understand. And because she doesn't understand it, she feels it more. That's the code. Let me be clear, this isn't about playing games. It's not about being distant, manipulative, or emotionally unavailable. It's about being unreadable, not because you're hiding something, but because you're centered. You're not trying to be liked. You're not looking for her approval. You're just they're fully present, but not performing. And in that space of still presence, she begins to project. She wonders, why does he feel different from other guys? What is he thinking right now? Is he into me, or is he just like this with everyone? Why do I feel so drawn to someone who isn't trying at all? That's emotional tension. And she can't manufacture it. It has to come from you. See, most men try to create attraction through action texting. More, buying gifts, showing affection. And while those gestures can be sweet, they often miss the mark in the early stages, because what women remember is how you made them feel. And nothing stirs a woman's feelings like emotional curiosity. Think about it this way. We're living in an age of overstimulation. Everyone's talking. Everyone's posting. Everyone's showing off. So when a man walks in and says nothing, yet commands the room with his presence, it's magnetic. When a man doesn't need to fill the space, that space becomes valuable. Your stillness isn't emptiness. It's energy. It speaks louder than your words ever could. That's why the emotionally unreadable man is so attractive, not because he's mysterious on purpose, but because he's not addicted to performance. He's not broadcasting emotion for validation. He's centered in who he is, and that centeredness creates contrast in a world of noise. Now here's where it gets interesting. Women are wired to scan for emotional leadership. And leadership doesn't always mean action. It often means composure in uncertainty. So when you remain grounded while she's still figuring you out, you're subtly communicating, I know who I am. I don't need to convince you. And that flips the script, because suddenly she becomes the one investing emotionally. She leans in. She imagines. She analyzes. She gets hooked, not on what you said, but on what you didn't. Now you might be thinking, but what if I'm naturally expressive? Should I hide that? Not at all. Expressiveness isn't the enemy. Neediness is. You can be passionate, charismatic, funny, but the moment your emotional expression becomes a plea for reassurance, you've lost polarity. The goal is not to be robotic. It's to be rooted. Rooted in yourself. Rooted in your calm. Rooted in your value. With or without her attention. That's what creates the tension. That's what triggers the emotional code she can't hide. Because while she might say she wants certainty, she feels attraction in the not. Knowing. In the slow burn. In the still gaze. in the moments where she can't quite figure you out. And here's a final thought to consider. If you're always telling her how you feel, you rob her of the thrill of discovery. But if you give her just enough to feel safe while holding back, just enough to remain grounded, you create space for connection to grow organically. Uncertainty isn't a flaw. It's a spark, a tension that invites curiosity. And where there's curiosity, desire soon follows. So ask yourself, where in your life are you trying too hard to be understood? Where are you over-explaining, over-giving, over-texting? And what would happen if, just for one moment, you said nothing? Let her wonder. That's where the story begins. Stay with me. In the next section, we'll explore another hidden emotional switch you've probably never noticed, but once you see it, you can never unsee it. Let's move forward. Part 2. She feels you before she sees you. Why presence beats looks. Here's a hard truth most men don't realize until it's too late. Women feel your energy long before they notice your appearance or care about your status. Let that land for a moment. Before you open your mouth, before you flash your job title, before you talk about your car, your watch, or your gym routine, she's already felt you. Not your resume. Not your words. Your emotional state speaks louder than your physical body ever could. And most men are walking into rooms screaming insecurity, even if they look the part. Now, I'm not saying looks don't matter at all, or that success is irrelevant. They absolutely have their place. But when it comes to attraction, the kind that bypasses logic and gets straight to her nervous system, it's not your body or your bank account she responds to first. It's your presence. So what is presence really? It's that rare combination of stillness, groundedness, and full awareness. It's how you hold yourself when no one's looking. It's the way your body feels to her before a word leaves your lips. Posture, pace, eye contact, silence. These are not just habits, they are signals. And most men are leaking energy without realizing it. Think about it. You ever meet a guy who's technically attractive, well-dressed, successful, even charismatic, but something just feels off? It's usually because he's not present. He's either performing, trying to win people over, or reacting, constantly adjusting himself based on the room. Neither creates safety. And here's what's so often misunderstood. Women aren't just looking for excitement. They're scanning for emotional safety, not in the "can you protect me from a bear" kind of way, but in the "can I relax in your energy" kind of way. Can I speak and be heard? Can I express and not be judged? Can I feel your attention without needing to fight for it? That's presence, and it's rare. Because most men aren't trained to be present. They're trained to perform. We grow up learning how to impress, how to prove, how to earn validation by doing more, talking louder, being clever. But true masculine energy doesn't prove, it holds. It listens, it observes. Imagine a calm lake, no ripples, no disturbance. That's what presence feels like. And when a woman comes into contact with that energy, something in her softens, not because you're trying to impress her, but because your energy isn't pulling on hers. You're not trying to get something. You're already full, and that fullness is magnetic. Let's go deeper. Ever notice how some men can walk into a room and say almost nothing, yet somehow everyone notices them? That's not luck. That's energetic control. They're not seeking approval. They're not trying to be seen. They've simply mastered the art of being fully where they are, not stuck in their heads, not anxious about the outcome, not scattered by fear. They've learned to quiet the noise inside, and because there's no noise, people can feel them. This is the real power of presence, not dominance, not flash, but still, focused energy. So, how do you build that kind of presence? Start by noticing your body. Are you grounded when you speak, or are you racing ahead, waiting for her reaction? Slow your pace. Lower your voice. Don't be afraid of silence. Silence for the present man is a statement. It says, I'm not afraid to sit in this moment with you. Women are incredibly attuned to subtle cues. The way you glance, the way you exhale, the tension in your jaw. They're reading all of it without even realizing they are, which means if you walk in with emotional chaos, even if your words are perfect, she'll feel the noise beneath it. But if you walk in calm, collected, self-contained, she'll feel that too. And that's what makes her lean in. Not because you're the loudest, but because you're the stillest. So let me ask you, when was the last time you walked into a room and truly felt your feet on the ground? When was the last time you gave someone your full attention without reaching for your phone, your next thought, or your ego? Because if you want to be remembered, not just seen, you have to stop performing and start arriving. Emotional presence is felt before anything else. Before she notices your jawline or your watch or your followers. And here's the kicker. Once she feels that presence, looks and status become amplifiers, not prerequisites. Presence makes everything else shine brighter. Without it, the rest fades into noise. So the next time you think about attraction, start with the question, can I hold this moment fully, without rushing? That's the man she remembers. That's the man she trusts. That's the man she craves. Stay with me, because in the next section, we'll look at why certainty within yourself is the most potent form of seduction, and why it's silently killing your need to chase. Let me ask you something a little uncomfortable. What happens when you go quiet? Not because you're angry, not because you're playing games, but because you're simply still. Does she notice? Does she lean in? Does she wonder? Or does the silence get filled with noise you didn't expect? Her attention wandering, her texts slowing, her curiosity fading? Here's what most men don't understand. Presence creates impact, but absence creates echo. When you're fully there, present, grounded, emotionally available, you plant something in her, a feeling, a question, a shift in rhythm she didn't know she needed. But when you step back, not with resentment, not as punishment, but with peaceful detachment, that presence starts to echo. And in that echo, she begins to feel something she can't quite name. Where did that energy go? Why do I miss someone who said so little? That is the silent power of absence. But let's be clear, this isn't about ghosting. It's not about manipulation. And it's definitely not about withdrawal as revenge. This is about the kind of absence that's born from fullness, not lack. The man who can step away, not because he's afraid to lose her, but because he refuses to lose himself. That man radiates a different kind of gravity. See, most guys are either too available or too reactive. When she pulls back, they chase. When she goes quiet, they panic. When she tests boundaries, they fold, because deep down, their presence was never rooted. It was tethered to her validation. But a man who knows how to hold absence, that's a man who's centered even in the void. She texts less. He doesn't flinch. She gets distant. He doesn't collapse. He trusts that the space he creates speaks louder than words ever could. Why? Because predictability kills curiosity, and women are not attracted to certainty of access. They're attracted to emotional polarity. If she always knows where you are, what you'll say, how you'll respond, then the dynamic becomes flat, predictable, familiar. And desire doesn't live in familiarity, it lives in mystery. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying to become distant, confusing, or emotionally unavailable. I'm saying to become grounded enough that your silence becomes a signal, not a question mark. Because here's the paradox. You don't create absence to make her miss. You create absence because you're complete, even without her presence. And that energy, that non-needy stillness, it lingers. It lives in the room after you leave. That it makes her question not your affection, but her influence. Was I too much? Did he lose interest? Is he thinking of me? And suddenly, you're not chasing anymore. Because she's leaning forward into the space you left behind. This is the opposite of Performative masculinity. This is energetic self-respect. You're not withholding. Out of punishment, you're retreating into peace. You're not pulling back because of fear. You're choosing solitude over performance. That's what absence really is. A return to the self. A reminder that your center doesn't orbit her response. And ironically, that's what makes you unforgettable. Because she's not just remembering your jokes, your texts, your touch. She's remembering your calm. The way your silence wasn't empty, it was rich with presence. And she starts to realize something. Most men talk too much, push too hard, cling too fast, but you disappeared with dignity. No drama, no explanation, no collapse. Just a quiet return to yourself. And that absence? It rings louder than 1,000 messages. So the next time you feel the urge to prove your value, pause. Ask yourself, am I reaching because I want to connect or because I'm afraid she forget me? Is my presence full, or is it secretly asking for approval? Can I step away, not to test her, but to protect my peace? Because when you can leave without a need, you become the kind of man she needs, without even realizing why. You stop being the background noise. You become the echo she listens for, the silent weight in her chest when things get too quiet. That's the power of absence, rooted in strength, not ego. And that power, it doesn't chase. It attracts. It remembers who it is, even when the room forgets. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore the rare emotional shift that separates a man who's forgotten from a man who's felt long after he's gone. Have you ever watched a storm collapse into silence? Not because the clouds cleared, but because something stronger arrived? That's what masculine calm does to feminine chaos. It doesn't fight it. It doesn't fix it. It simply holds it. Here's something most men get wrong. They think their role is to match a woman's emotional energy, be as expressive, as passionate, as emotionally intense as she is in the moment. But what if the most powerful thing you could offer is your stillness? Not silence out of fear. Not shut down because you don't know what to say. But calm, intentional, grounded calm that doesn't flinch when the energy around you gets turbulent. Because here's the truth most men never learn. Women often lead with emotion. It's not wrong. It's not manipulative. It's just their language. They express to connect. They feel to process. They speak while figuring it out, not always after. And when they do, they're not always looking for answers. They're feeling the space. And that space is you. So when she's spiraling, venting, testing, or even provoking, most men make one of two mistakes. They either shut down or overreact. One tries to mute the storm. The other adds lightning to it. But the man who can sit in the storm without trying to change it, he's the one she trusts. He's the one who makes her feel something few men ever do. Safe. And not just physically safe, but emotionally held. That's why calm is not weakness. It's mastery. It's not you being indifferent. It's you being unmoved. Not emotionally unavailable, but emotionally unshakable. There's a difference. One feels cold. The other feels solid. And women can tell. Let me paint you a scene. She walks in, clearly upset. Her day's been chaotic. She starts talking fast, loud, maybe even irrational. She's not at war with you, but it feels like intensity is in the air. Most men will either match her tone or shut her down with logic, but the masculine man does neither. He stays seated. He listens fully. He doesn't flinch. He's breathing deeper, not faster. He gives her the space to express, but not the fuel to escalate. And in that space, something remarkable happens. She calms herself, not because he forced her to, but because his calm offered her another frequency to tune into. This is the law of emotional leadership. In relationships, someone always leads the emotional tone. If you don't choose that role, she will. And when feminine chaos leads, things get unstable. But when masculine calm leads, she softens, she exhales. She remembers her own center. This is what women mean when they say, "I just want to feel safe." They're not talking about locks on the doors or money in the bank. They're talking about your nervous system. Can it hold theirs when theirs is overwhelmed? That's the real test. And it's where so many men fall short, not because they don't care, but because they were never taught how to stay grounded when emotion rises. So here's the question. Can you remain still while she's emotional? Can you hold your breath until she finishes hers? Can you witness her storm without getting swept up in it? Because if you can, you become irreplaceable, not flashy, not loud, not overly impressive. Just solid. She go to bed thinking, "I don't know what it is about him, but I feel safe when I'm near him." And safety, for a woman, is attraction at its deepest level. It's what makes her open, trust, commit. Not because she's told to, but because her nervous system says, "Yes, stay." Let's be honest, anyone can make a woman laugh. Anyone can buy flowers, take her to dinner, say the right lines, but few can make her feel truly settled. And in a world that's loud, fast, and reactive, that kind of man is rare. So what creates that kind of calm? Not pretending, not suppressing, but emotional regulation. The ability to notice your own triggers and not react. The ability to hear her pain without needing to fix it. The ability to sit in discomfort and still choose clarity over chaos. That's what she respects. Not emotional outbursts, not over-explaining, but the man who owns his state, especially when hers is in flux. So next time she's testing you, expressing, or even melting down, don't panic. Breathe, observe, be still, because in your stillness, she finds balance. And in your calm, she finds herself again. This is not about becoming her therapist. It's about becoming a man who doesn't lose himself just because she's lost in a moment. That kind of calm, it's not loud, but it's unforgettable. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll talk about the secret emotional mirror you hold, how your self-worth silently teaches her how to value you, without ever saying a word. Let me ask you something uncomfortable, but honest. When was the last time you gave a woman your presence? Not because you wanted her to stay, but because you were already whole without her. Most men never get there. Most men, without even realizing it, approach women from a place of emotional debt. A quiet craving, a need to be filled, a hunger to be chosen. And women, they feel it, not in what you say, but in the pull behind your smile. The way your compliments feel more like questions. The way your attention comes with invisible strings. It's not evil, it's human. But it's not attractive, because neediness, even when hidden behind charm, creates emotional pressure. And pressure is exhausting to her. See, you may think she's turned off by your looks, or your finances, or your lack of clever pickup lines. But more often than not, what pushes her away is your silent urgency. Your desire to be needed. But here's the truth. The moment she feels you don't need her is the moment she starts to want you. Not because you're playing hard to get, not because you're acting aloof, but because you've become self-sufficient in a world full of emotional beggars. You radiate, you don't orbit, and that shift, it changes everything, because a man who doesn't need her chooses her. And a man who chooses from fullness is far more attractive than a man who clings from lack. Let's break this down. Imagine two men. One constantly reaches out, checks in, plans, adjusts, and rearranges his life around her availability. His attention is generous but predictable. His presence is always guaranteed. Now picture the second man. He's kind, present, emotionally warm, but he's also grounded in his own life. His time isn't a given, it's a gift. And when he shows up, she feels it. Because he didn't have to. Guess which man she thinks about when he's gone? It's not a game. It's not manipulation. It's value. Your time becomes valuable the moment it's no longer guaranteed. Because when you're available all the time your presence fades into the background. It loses weight. It becomes expected. But when you have a life that fills you, a purpose that fuels you, and peace that centers you, your attention becomes sacred. And here's what makes this powerful. When a woman senses that you're okay without her, something deep inside her wakes up, not fear, but curiosity and respect, because she knows you're not like most men. Most men offer emotional pressure disguised as romance, but you offer freedom. And ironically, that's what makes her feel drawn to you. Because let's be real, no one wants to carry the weight of being someone else's emotional oxygen. She doesn't want to feel responsible for your happiness. She wants to share in it. She wants to be with a man who brings joy into her life, not demands that she be the joy in his. That's the difference between connection and clinging. And when she feels that your world doesn't collapse in her absence, that's when she starts imagining her place in your presence. So how do you get there? You stop trying to be enough for her and start becoming enough for yourself. You stop proving and start choosing. You don't withhold to punish. You just no longer offer your energy out of fear. You offer it with intention. You learn to walk away from anything that costs you your peace, even if it comes wrapped in attraction. Even if she's everything you thought you wanted. Because your emotional dignity matters more than her validation. Now let me say something bold. If you've ever been ghosted, ignored, or breadcrumbed, it's possible she didn't pull away because you weren't good enough. She pulled away because she could feel your need, your quiet expectation that she complete something in you that only you can complete. And once you learn how to sit in your own solitude, to enjoy your own energy, to cultivate inner stillness, you become the man who doesn't beg to be seen. You become the man who chooses when to be known. And that kind of energy, it doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. So ask yourself, am I giving because I'm full or because I'm hoping to be filled? Would I still feel whole if she left tomorrow? Is my time valuable, even when no one's watching? Because when you become a man who doesn't need her, that's when you become the man she chooses. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll go deeper into how women mirror your emotional standards and why your relationship with yourself silently teaches her how to love you. Let's flip the script for a moment. You've probably been told that if you like her, show her. Text her often. Always be available. Be consistent. Be the guy who's always there. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you. Over-availability breeds emotional numbness, not because she's ungrateful, but because when your presence becomes predictable, it stops being felt. We live in a culture of constant access. Endless notifications, messages delivered in seconds, immediate replies. But what gets lost in all that speed? Mystery, anticipation, presence. And when you're always available, always saying yes, always showing up, you unintentionally make yourself emotionally invisible. You become the wallpaper of her life there, but not noticed. That's where strategic unavailability becomes powerful, not as a tactic, but as a form of respect. Respect for yourself, your time, and your emotional bandwidth. Let's be clear. This is not about playing games. This is not about disappearing, ghosting, or triggering anxiety. This is about becoming intentional with your energy, because what's rare becomes valued, and what's constant becomes expected. Think about the last time you truly missed someone. It wasn't because they messaged you 10 times a day. It was because they disappeared into their world, and you felt the silence they left behind. That missing is emotional leverage, not manipulation, but natural consequence. When your presence has weight, your absence will echo. And here's what most men don't realize. Being always available doesn't make you more attractive. It makes you emotionally flat. You become a part of her routine, not a source of emotional charge. But when you step back, not out of fear, not out of ego, but from inner strength, you allow her emotional rhythm to reset. She starts to notice your silence. She starts to miss your presence, not because you created a void, but because your energy had enough impact to leave one. This is where the art of timing comes in. Every meaningful connection is built on emotional contrast. Presence and absence, sound and silence, action and restraint. If you remove one, the other loses its power. Imagine a beautiful song with no pauses. Imagine a film with no cuts. Imagine a relationship where you're always accessible, always replying, always chasing. Where's the texture? Where's the rhythm? Where's the emotional breath? Women are emotional creatures. They don't just respond to what you do, they respond to how you space it. That's why your intentional absence is just as important as your presence. It allows her to feel the contrast. And in that contrast, curiosity returns. She starts wondering, why hasn't he texted today? What's he up to? Did I take his presence for granted? And suddenly your energy becomes sharp again. Felt, noticed, desired. Here's what you need to remember. It's not about being cold. It's about being measured. You don't vanish to punish. You step back to preserve depth. And when you return, you do so with full presence. Not out of neediness, but from a place of centered intention. That's what she remembers. That's what builds longing, not panic, but a subtle pull toward you that she can't explain. This is emotional polarity in action. And the best part? It's sustainable. Because once you learn to manage your availability, you stop burning yourself out trying to be enough. You stop pouring endlessly. You start offering. And that shift from always giving to selectively offering is what makes your time feel valuable again. It's not about pretending to be busy. It's about being busy, becoming the man you respect. Because that man, he doesn't chase connection, he attracts it. Through silence just as much as speech. So here's your reflection. Are you giving your presence out of abundance, or out of fear she lose interest? Do you value your time or give it away to prove you're worthy of hers? Can you step back not to provoke, but to reset the rhythm of intimacy? Because when you master the art of emotional pacing, you no longer need to beg for attention. Your absence speaks for you. And when you return, when she feels you again, there's no need for words. She already knows. You're not just someone who shows up. You're someone who chooses when and how you do. And that's rare. And rare is remembered. Let's keep going. In the next section, we'll explore how a woman's emotional investment rises when your boundaries quietly remind her. Access to me is earned, not assumed. You don't have to raise your voice to command attention. You don't have to chase, persuade, or prove your worth to a woman to be respected. Because here's the truth no one teaches you. Real attraction isn't declared, it's demonstrated. Through self-respect. And self-respect doesn't show up in your words. It lives in your boundaries. We talk a lot in modern culture about being nice, being supportive, and doing whatever it takes to keep a woman interested. But let me ask you something. What if the thing that keeps her truly attracted is the quiet way you refuse to betray yourself? Most men believe the more they give, the more they'll be loved. They think saying yes to everything will make them seem more loyal, more kind, more valuable. But what actually happens? They slowly shrink. They abandon their time. They abandon their opinions. They abandon their emotional spaced out all in hopes of keeping her happy. And ironically, that's exactly what makes her lose respect. Because when you start orbiting her needs, instead of standing firmly in your own center, you become less of a man she looks up to, and more of a man she looks past. But a man with self-respect? He doesn't need to say much. She can feel his standards without him having to explain them. He knows where his line is. And when something crosses it, he doesn't argue, he simply walks away. And that energy? That calm, grounded, non-reactive power? It's magnetic. Because women aren't just testing if you'll give them what they want. They're subconsciously testing to see if you'll give yourself away in the process. And when you don't, When you stay rooted in your truth, you shift the dynamic entirely. She begins to adjust herself, not because you told her to, but because your presence holds a quiet mirror. You teach her how to treat you, not with lectures, but with consistency. Because here's the paradox. You don't get her respect by pleasing her. You get it by respecting yourself in front of her. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine she's late for your date, not once, but 3 times. Each time she apologizes and you say it's okay. You're trying to be understanding, flexible, kind, but deep down, resentment is growing. You feel disrespected, unseen. Now imagine a different version of you. The 3rd time she's late, you greet her calmly, but you shorten the date. You don't argue, you don't punish. But your time is no longer fully offered. You're not cold. You're not angry. You're just clear. You don't need to yell to send a message. Just stop rewarding behavior that doesn't align with your value. That's self-respect. And women, especially intelligent, emotionally attuned women, notice everything. They feel when your standards are low. They feel when your boundaries are bendable. And they feel when your self-respect is not for sale. And that's when the shift happens. She starts showing up more intentionally. She starts putting in effort, not because you asked for it, but because she wants to rise to the level of your energy. Because contrary to what pop culture says, women love boundaries. They don't crave control. They crave certainty. And boundaries create emotional certainty. They say, this man knows who he is. I can trust that, even when I'm chaotic, even when I push, even when I test. She may not say it out loud, but she feels safe when she knows your center isn't built on her approval. That's why the man with self-respect doesn't chase validation. He doesn't fear being alone. He doesn't compromise his core for momentary closeness. He offers connection, but never at the cost of his identity. That's the man she fights to keep. Not because he's perfect, but because he's anchored. She knows she can't manipulate him. She knows she can't emotionally sway him into betraying himself. She knows that if she crosses the line, he'll leave with peace, not bitterness. That's what makes him unforgettable. And that kind of attraction, it's built slowly, silently, through moments where he could bend, but doesn't. So here's the question. Where have you been compromising yourself to keep someone close? What standards have you softened just to avoid conflict or rejection? Are you trying to win her heart while losing your spine? Because when you choose self-respect, you stop chasing women and start attracting them on a level deeper than charm, deeper than chemistry. You attract them with your clarity. And clarity? That's the sexiest thing a grounded man wears. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore how your silence, not your speech, reveals whether you're leading or following the emotional current. Let's talk about a moment every man eventually faces, that quiet, uncomfortable crossroad where you realize you could stay or you could walk, and not out of spite, not to make a scene, not to punish her, but because you've finally remembered what you're worth. See, there's a kind of power that doesn't come from how loud you speak, how much you give, or how hard you try to prove yourself. It comes from knowing that you can leave and that you will, if it means keeping your dignity. This isn't about being cold. It's not about having the upper hand. It's about understanding that a man's value is never up for negotiation. Because here's the truth most men never hear. When she realizes you could walk away, and more importantly, that you would, the entire dynamic changes. Not because you've become distant, but because she can feel that your presence is a choice, not a dependence. You are no longer there because you need her attention. You're there because it aligns with your standards, and that kind of energy, it's rare, it's felt, and it shifts everything. Most men lose power the moment they start chasing validation. They try harder, they text more, they become nice at the cost of being respected, and what begins as interest slowly erodes into indifference. Why? Because she knows on some deep, intuitive level that you're not staying out of strength. You're staying out of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing her. Fear that walking away would prove you weren't good enough. But the man who's willing to walk? He's not afraid of being alone because he's not empty without her. He brings wholeness to the table, not hunger. That's what makes him powerful. And it's that power quiet, unspoken, that a woman remembers long after words fade. Let me give you a picture. You're in a conversation that's starting to go sideways. Maybe she's testing you. Maybe she's crossing a line you've made clear before. Maybe it's a pattern disrespect wrapped in charm. Most men, in that moment, will try to manage the tension. They'll over-explain. They'll accommodate. They'll negotiate their standards in exchange for peace. But you take a breath. You don't raise your voice. You don't argue. You just lean back and say with your energy, "This doesn't work for me." And you leave. Not dramatically, not to punish her, but because your peace is worth more than her presence. That's not ego. That's clarity. And the moment she realizes that she can't pull you into chaos with charm or chemistry or confusion, that's the moment she starts to respect you on a whole new level. Because here's what women won't always say, but always feel: a man who will never walk away is a man they will never fully value. It's human nature. We respect what's earned, not what's given endlessly. We crave the presence of someone who chooses to stay, not someone who needs to. And detachment? Real detachment isn't a tactic. It's a declaration of worth. It's not pretending not to care. It's realizing that your center doesn't depend on someone else's opinion. It's knowing that you bring value to the room, not because of what you say, but because of who you are. And if that value isn't seen, you walk. No malice, no need for revenge. Just quiet conviction. And that walk? It's not just a movement. It's a message. It tells the world and yourself that you won't trade your self-respect for closeness, that you won't cling to what's familiar if it costs you your dignity. And once you embody that energy, everything shifts, because you'll start to attract people, not just women who feel your boundaries and respect them. People who want to meet you at your standard, not pull you below it. And most of all, you'll finally feel what so many men never get to feel in relationships: freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from performing. Freedom from pleasing. Freedom from playing small to stay connected. That's the power of walking away. So here's your mirror. Today, is there a situation in your life you've stayed in too long out of fear? Have you confused loyalty with self-sacrifice? Are you giving someone access to you who hasn't earned your presence? If the answer stings, good. That sting is clarity. Because once you find the strength to walk away from what dishonors your worth, you'll never beg again. You'll never shrink again. You'll never betray yourself just to belong. And that's when you become truly magnetic. Because the man who can walk away is the man no one wants to lose. Let's move forward. In the next part, we'll explore how your silence, when rooted in self-worth, can speak louder than any love letter ever could. There's a moment every strong woman is waiting for. She might not say it. She might not even know how to name it. But deep down she's longing for one thing: your certainty, not your dominance, not your ego, not your loud opinions or forceful strategies, but your internal steadiness. Because here's the truth most men miss. Woman doesn't surrender to control. She surrenders to clarity. And if she can't feel your clarity, she can't relax into your leadership. We live in a time where the word masculine has become misunderstood, twisted into ideas of force, aggression, or authority. But true masculine energy isn't about dominating her. It's about anchoring her. It's not about pushing her down. It's about creating such grounded stability that she finally feels safe enough to let go. Because feminine energy by nature is expressive, dynamic, emotional, flowing. It wants to be felt. It wants to explore. It wants to move, but it doesn't want to lead. And when she's around a man who is emotionally inconsistent, reactive, unsure of himself, she has no choice but to harden. She has to take control. She has to manage, correct, direct, not because she wants to dominate him, but because she doesn't trust his leadership. And let's be honest, how could she? You can't follow someone who doesn't know where they're going. You can't open to someone who opens and closes with the weather. You can't relax with a man who makes you feel like you're always walking on emotional eggshells. That's why masculine certainty is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And that certainty doesn't mean you always have the answers. It just means you're rooted. You know who you are. You know what you value. You don't get thrown off by every storm or seduced by every distraction. You can lead not by force, but by presence. And that kind of man, he creates the emotional structure. A woman needs to soften. Let me give you a real-life example. You're in a disagreement. Things get emotional. She's saying a lot. Maybe she's even projecting, testing, pushing your buttons. Most men will either explode or retreat. They'll match her chaos or shut down completely. But the man who stands calmly in the eye of the storm, who holds eye contact, who breathes slower, who listens without being baited, that man shows her something rare. I'm not afraid of your emotions. I can hold you, even here. And the moment she feels that, she starts to melt. Not because he won, not because he's in control, but because his certainty became her permission to relax. Feminine surrender is not weakness. It's not about becoming submissive in a degrading way. It's about feeling so safe, so seen, and so emotionally held that she no longer needs to protect herself, and only a man who is unshakably anchored can create that space. That's what women mean when they say they want a real man. They don't mean someone who dominates. They mean someone who won't flinch when they're emotional, who won't run when things get hard, who won't crumble because she has strong opinions or wild energy. They mean a man who's clear. Man who can say no with love. A man who can say yes with integrity. A man who leads not to control her, but to guide the relationship toward deeper connection. But here's the warning. If you are emotionally unstable, unpredictable, needy, or unsure, she will not surrender. She can't, because surrender is not a logical decision. It's a nervous system response. And her body knows when you're faking your strength, when your calm is performative, when your confidence is fragile, when your leadership is actually control in disguise. And so she stays on edge. She stays guarded. She stays in control, not because she wants to dominate, but because she's protecting herself from collapse. That's why the work is not to control her. It's to calm yourself. To build such a strong inner frame that nothing outside of you can shake your identity. Because when you become a mountain, she becomes a river. And that dynamic, that's where passion lives. That's where intimacy grows. That's where she starts to fall, not for your words, not for your looks, but for the feeling of safety your certainty provides. So here's your reflection today. Can you stay grounded when she's emotional? Can you lead without needing to overpower? Can you be clear in your vision, even when the world around you is uncertain? Because the man who is clear in himself, he doesn't beg for her to trust him. He becomes someone worthy of trust. And in that space, she softens. She surrenders. Not because you told her to, but because your presence gave her no reason to resist. That's the real power of masculine certainty. Let's continue, because in the next part, we'll talk about the final piece. Why silence, not words, is often the loudest sign of masculine mastery. Here's the final shift. And it may be the most important one of all. Stop trying to be chosen. That sentence might sound harsh, but it's the line that separates boys from men. Reactive energy from grounded leadership, chasing from attracting. Because most men are living in approval-seeking mode and don't even know it. They adjust their tone. They overthink their texts. They study what she likes, what she wants, What she respond to, not out of curiosity but out of fear. Fear that they won't be good enough. Fear that if they don't play it right, they'll be left behind. Fear that if they show their true selves unfiltered and firm, they'll be rejected. And this fear shows up in subtle ways. You apologize too much, even when you didn't cross a line. You suppress your opinions to avoid disagreement. You overgive, hoping it will make you more lovable. Sound familiar? You're not alone. We've all been there. But the truth is, this approval-chasing energy doesn't attract love, it repels it. Because here's the paradox. The moment you try to be chosen, you've already lowered your value. You've placed yourself in a position of emotional audition, and she can feel it. She doesn't have to say it. She doesn't even have to fully understand it. But she knows intuitively that she's the prize in this dynamic, and you're just hoping. But now, let's flip it. What happens when a man stops chasing approval, when he stops adjusting, performing, and asking to be seen? What happens when he lives as if he is the standard? Everything changes, not because he becomes arrogant, not because he starts playing games, but because he's finally stopped outsourcing his worth. He no longer waits to be picked. He builds a life, a presence, a posture that says, I don't need to be chosen, I am already full. And from that energy, he becomes the chooser, not in a cold or dismissive way, but in a deeply magnetic way. Because women don't crave a man who needs constant validation. They crave a man who is rooted in himself. A man who walks into the room and doesn't seek attention, but somehow gets it. A man who doesn't ask, am I good enough for her? But calmly wonders, is she aligned with the life I'm building? That's a powerful shift, and it's not external. It's internal. It happens when you stop treating yourself like a product and start treating yourself like a principle. Because the standard doesn't chase. The standard doesn't bend to be liked. The standard doesn't fear rejection, because rejection doesn't threaten who he is. He lives, breathes, walks, and speaks from a place of grounded identity. And you want to know what's wild? When you stop trying to be chosen, you often become the most irresistible man in the room. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally not trying at all. Your stillness becomes presence. Your silence becomes strength. Your boundaries become sacred. And your self-worth becomes contagious. Let me give you something to sit with. If you're constantly asking, what do women want? You've already lost, because that question puts you in a reactive state. It makes you moldable, malleable, bendable. It strips you of your core. But when you shift the question to, what kind of woman fits the world I'm building? You reclaim your frame. You move from reacting to selecting, from hoping to leading, from waiting to being. And here's the thing. Not every woman will rise to meet you. Not every woman will be ready for the man you're becoming. And that's okay, because your job isn't to shrink to be more palatable. It's to shine so brightly that only those who resonate can stay in your light. That's what living as the standard looks like. It's quiet. It's unshakable. It doesn't need applause. And it doesn't demand attention. It just is. And in a world full of noise and performance and begging to be seen, that kind of grounded masculinity, it doesn't need to chase anything, because it already has everything. So here's your final question. Are you still waiting to be chosen? Are you shrinking your truth for connection? Or are you ready finally to become the man who no longer asks for a seat at the table, because he knows he is the table? Let this land. And then live it. This isn't the end. This is where it truly begins, because the man who no longer needs to be chosen is the one the world can't stop watching. So let's bring it full circle. You've heard every trigger, every shift, every layer of masculine power that doesn't scream, it whispers. But now, here's what I want to leave you with. Stoic masculinity is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming calm. It's not emotional detachment, it's emotional discipline. You're not here to numb yourself to the world. You're here to stop letting the world dictate who you are, because most men today are reactive. They perform. They chase. They over-explain. They negotiate their worth in the hope of being chosen. And the entire time, they're leaking power. But the Stoic man? He does the opposite. He chooses. He moves slowly, but deliberately. He doesn't seek attention. He holds it through presence. He's not desperate to be liked. He's grounded in what he stands for. He doesn't need to raise his voice. His silence already has weight. That's what makes him unforgettable, you see. The modern world has misunderstood what masculine strength looks like. It's not domination. It's not being the loudest in the room. And it's definitely not chasing approval like a transaction. True strength is the man who walks through life with clarity, with restraint, with a kind of anchored presence that women feel before he ever says a word. This isn't about rejecting emotion. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." But that freedom, it doesn't come from escaping your feelings. It comes from mastering them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that strength? It shows up when you stop needing to be reactive to everything around you, when her mood doesn't throw you off, when her silence doesn't shake your worth, when her beauty doesn't make you abandon your boundaries. It shows up when you stop chasing love like it's survival and start becoming the kind of man love gravitates toward. And Epictetus said it perfectly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This is the foundation of Stoic masculinity. You don't need more to be valuable. You simply need to return to yourself, because here's the final truth. The shift isn't about getting better at being picked. It's about letting go of needing to be picked at all. You move from chasing to choosing, from performing to embodying, from being an option to becoming a standard, a presence, a man whose peace is his signature, a man whose path is so clear that she either walks with you or watches you walk away. You're not here to be remembered for how hard you tried to be everything. You're here to be remembered for how deeply you knew who you were, especially when it would have been easier to forget. That's what makes you unforgettable. It's the depth behind your calm, the stillness behind your gaze, the weight behind your boundaries, because in the end, women don't crave a man who needs their attention. They crave a man who carries so much internal power that she can finally exhale around him. She doesn't have to lead. She doesn't have to guess. She doesn't have to protect herself from his chaos, because your calm says, "You're safe here, but only if you come correct." So wherever you are right now, maybe you're healing, rebuilding, reclaiming. Know this. You don't have to prove your value to anyone. You are the value. And when you embody that truth, not just in words, but in presence, people start treating you differently. The world starts responding to your energy differently. And she'll feel it even in your silence. So choose it. Choose your peace. Choose your presence. Choose your path. Because the man who owns his life no longer begs for a place in someone else's. And that is what Stoic masculinity truly is. If this message spoke to you, if you're on this journey toward deeper masculine presence, toward real internal power, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe. Not just for more content, but because you're choosing to walk this path fully and unapologetically. This isn't a trend. This is your life. Live it like the standard you are. I'll see you in the next one.